Welcome to the show. My name is Clash Ruddy, and I'm very happy that we continue to get very good feedback in relation to this show. Tonight, I'll be talking to a youth mentor, and you find out more about him just after this. Thank you very much. Um, Tonight, I'll be talking to Eric Agyeman, who is a youth mentor. He mentors youth. He does a lot of events where he speaks to young people in schools and other community settings. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. How are you going?
I'm great, thank you, and thanks for having me on tonight.
No worries, Eric. Just introduce yourself a little bit so we know what you do, and what are some of the things that you actually do with the young people.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. Well, my name is Eric, and born in Ghana, 1986, raised in New Zealand, came here to Melbourne in 1997, and I'll still never forget my first day in primary school in the eastern suburbs, racially bullied, and so that sort of set me off on a bit of a downward spiral, just in terms of low self-esteem and just a lot of, I guess, it developed into mental health challenges. And so in high school, because I was, still very young, didn't really know how to direct my energy and my frustrations. I unfortunately joined a gang at the time, and so got in a lot of trouble, 4 suspensions, and so it was one of those troubled teenagehood. And so my parents were very worried about me, and they tried to do everything that they could, which they did, and I'm so grateful for that. But somewhere along my journey, I basically did a whole 180 where I realized that my life had just gone right down, where I wanted to give up. And so through some group of people who kind of gave me hope for the future, inspired me, allowed me to really see the greatness that is within me, I was able to come out of that pit and really be able to dream for the future. And so fast forward a couple of decades now, I basically am in schools and within the mental health youth space, helping young people at the stage that I was at when I needed help myself. And so that is a lot of what I do. There's different expressions of it. There's obviously online stuff, there's school stuff, there's also a mentoring program as well that we do. And so that's sort of my experiences to what I do now.
Okay. Well, you got a fascinating story there. You started yourself in circumstances where you're actually a victim of, I suppose, youth energy. I would say there's a lot of people, young people have a lot of energy. They want to do things, and before you know it, they're in trouble. But then you change what was obviously an issue, and you turn that
Yeah.
into something quite positive. I mean, what was the main factor that led you to, sort of come out of that unfortunate situation you were in into becoming a mentor?
Yeah, well, I think if I trace it back, another way to look at that question is, what are the things that led me to not, believing in myself, to having low self-esteem, to wanting to please people, that I was, selling cigarettes. And I think a lot of that was just a lack of identity. There's a saying that when you don't know who you are, others will tell you who you are. And so for me, at that young age, I didn't know who I was. Therefore, I allowed influences and, from different places to really, and one of them was Tupac. I used to listen to a lot of Tupac and Biggie Smalls, and that became the lens through which I began to, see things.
Hmm.
For example, I saw gangs as normal because Tupac had a music video on MTV, right? that was just how we did things. So I think in my transition from that space into, I guess, where I am, the first was identity. For me to be, I guess, told, especially by my dad, that hey, you're not inferior just because of the color of your skin. Conversations around at that time, who's the fastest man in the world? What nationality are they? Who's the heavyweight boxing champion of the world? And so those sort of conversations sparked within me, I guess, a discovery of truth of who I actually am. That every single person here on earth is born for greatness, right? Every single person on earth here, I believe, is a king and a queen. And so when I began to take a hold of that identity, that was when the shift began to happen.
Okay. And you mentioned something actually quite significant. I see a lot of young people, whether it's in the mainstream society as well as,
Yeah,
and even more particularly within the African Australian community, who are very
yeah,
fascinated by the music and gangster
yeah,
kind of lifestyle from the
America.
US.
Yeah,
But there's a lot of issues in that. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of silly things. And
yeah.
how do what sort of advice would you give it? But the actual influence is so powerful that it's very difficult for kids not I mean to escape that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, there's research that was done in America, and the number one music genre that influences young people is actually hip hop. It's the most listened to genre. And however, 95% of hip hop is girls, drugs, and just shootings and all that sort of stuff. I
Mm,
remember once going into a school and a kid had a song playing. I'm like, "What song is that?" And he began to sing some of the lyrics, and it was along the lines of, "Push me to the edge. All my friends are dead. I don't really care if you cry." And I was just like, "Yo, like there is power in our words. There is power in the music that we listen to, because it becomes an influence and it becomes normalized." And so, for young people, I always challenge them. There's a saying that you are the average of the five closest people to you. And I
mm,
think that quote goes a little bit further than just who you hang around with. It's
mm,
also who you're listening to in your ears on your music Spotify playlist. It's also the top five groups of people you are following on social media.
mm,
A lot of these boys, like some of these young boys, the stuff they're following and all these rappers, it's just influencing them in a particular way. So I often say, for example, when it comes to music, just picture yourself 10, 15 years from now. You're in your car, your dream car, whatever that may be, and you got some music pumping, right? Get some beats going, but you've
mm,
got your daughter in the back seat, and you're hearing the song. The number one, Billboard guy, chart guy. His name is The Baby, for example. He has some of the worst lyrics you'll ever hear. You've got that going on, and he refers to girls as either the H word or the B word. It's like, how would you feel with your daughter in the back seat
mm,
hearing this? Would you ever refer to? And a lot of the boys, when I talk to them, they're like, "No way!" Oh, and I'm like, "Okay, so you won't do it then. Let's start now. Let's start."
mm.
Refreshing our playlist. Let's find some positive stuff, because there are really cool positive music. I mean, you can see I got a chain on. You can tell I'm not that. I'm not. I like some swagger.
Yeah, that's all
I'm not
cool,
saying
man. That's all good.
let's go listen to some Beethoven or
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but there is positive alternatives that can actually influence and inspire us for greatness.
And when you go to speak to these young people, and we'll show a few of these images, those images a little later on. What sort of messages do you actually tell them?
Yeah, so it really sort of depends on the audience and the crowd. I recently did one just before lockdown 6 in the western suburbs for a group of students at a school who had trouble with the law. So we talked a lot about, I guess, my own experiences of how I got into the gang, and just the mindset, the mentality, how to overcome peer pressure. When your friends are pressuring you, do this, do that. So that's sort of one aspect where it's all about, that sort of breaking down that gang mentality, that tough boy, tough guy. I call it
Mm,
boys to men. because a
Mm.
lot of the things that sometimes we can do, it's very boyish, very childish. But when we talk about responsibility, hey, what does that look like? What does it look like to actually honor and respect your parents? So that's one aspect. There's other stuff that we do as well, which is just to do with hope, using my story as as a boy that was born in Ghana, failed in English, but here I am today, doing what I do, just sharing the vision with them that anything is possible if they truly set their minds to it.
Yeah, anything is possible, and that's a message that I suppose young people need to hear quite early on, because the moment they start getting into a lot of these influences, then it becomes quite
Mm.
hard to take them away from it, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think that when they have a vision of their future, a lot of times it gives them direction. So when someone wants to become an athlete, their dream and vision is to play AFL or be the world's fastest man, which was my dream once upon a time, by the way. That person, because
You
of
you,
that,
you wanted to be you sent Bolt, did you?
I did. In New Zealand, I was the fastest kid in my whole school.
Okay.
In grade, I think grade 4 or so, I was the fastest kid in my whole primary school. So I had some aspirations.
That's good.
um,
That's good.
so
Yeah.
so when
You
these
know,
kids have a vision, it
yeah.
helps with discipline. It helps with focus to be able to actually say no to some of these, whether it's drugs and alcohol or all this other stuff that they can get into.
Okay. Now, what do you think? Let's get into the African Australian community, for example.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of issues with young people. Obviously, we know that those issues, although they are sort of highlighted too much or exaggerated
Mm.
in the media,
Yeah.
because 99 or 98% of young people are just regular young people who are doing their thing, but this very
Yeah.
tiny minority that does some of the stupid things we see in the media tends to
Yeah.
sort of taint the whole community. What,
Mm.
yeah, with what you've been doing, what sort of insight can you share with regards to how we can, the community can start helping some of these young people?
Yeah, well, look, to be honest, I think a lot of it starts from the head, the top, so
Mm-hmm.
community leaders, even parents, just really, to be honest, really coming sort of down to the level of these kids, actually hearing them out. I mean, even with my son, there's a lot of times where I find that I'm just operating as a 35-year-old without realizing my son's only 4.
Mm, mm,
So even like practically, sometimes I actually have to kneel down and just say, "Hey, what's happened to you? Like, why are you
mm,
crying? Like, what's happened?" If he comes home in a certain mood, my wife is the best at picking this up. She'll be like, "Something must have happened at school." So we get down on, and so I think uh, our parents and our leaders really need to be more invested. I mean, I'm sure they are, but just another level of investment where it's like, hey, we love you, we care for you, involve us in what you're doing. I
mm,
think at the moment there can be a little bit of a gap between the leaders and the young people. And young people feel like, well, we're not understood. You don't understand us. And when
mm.
we wear a chain, you look at us with some sort of eyes, and you know what I mean? So really just coming down to that level, meeting them eye to eye, because that's when there is the ability for them to trust a lot more, but also come to us for advice, for choices and decision making and all of those things as well.
But then engaging with young people these days is very, very tough, isn't it? They are,
It is.
all the time in their worlds, in the digital
Yeah,
world, where there's a whole
yeah,
lot of influences coming
yeah,
into their consciousness,
yeah,
and even for parents who are really trying tough, well, these
yeah.
parents are facing a lot of competition in controlling their kids' mind. So what what do you do in that sort of circumstance?
Two things that I have found has been really, really helpful in terms of the parents that we work with and their young people. Two
Yeah.
things. One is 1 day a week for 1 hour, 45 minutes, half, or whatever the time is, have one scheduled day a week where you spend time with your young person. But that
Mm.
time you spend, it is not what you want to do, it's what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, a lot of the boys, it's sports related. So it's about going out to the basketball court, and sometimes as a 45-year-old dad just ugh,
Yeah.
just doing what they love doing. And I've seen myself that over those sort of periods and activities, the young people actually open up. That is one of the best times that they will open up, when you're doing something they love. So that's
Mm-hmm.
number one. Number two, is a bit of a, not a silly one, but TikTok. So obviously the kids are very, very, engrossed in TikTok. Something such as doing a little dance with them, like, crazy as that may sound, it can
Yeah.
actually bring some form of a bond, but it also brings the fun and the laughter. Because I guarantee you, if they show you some dance moves, we probably won't be able to do it on the first try, right? Creates
Yeah.
laughter, breaks the ice, breaks some tension, and it's just a little bit of fun. Because some of these young people, they don't see the older generation as fun. But
Mm.
doing something like a TikTok, you know, might lose a little bit of dignity, so what? But it
Well,
brings fun into the picture.
yeah, absolutely. So you got to find a way to connect with kids and do it their way rather than rather than
That's
your
right.
way as a parent.
That's right.
But then how do you counter the, the online and digital negative influence? Because I mean, I have kids. I've got a 17-year-old and a
Mm,
14-year-old. They're all boys,
yeah.
and it's so difficult because you're sort of trying to balance the need for them to spend the time doing whatever they want to do, but
Yeah.
also you don't want to leave them just being too much sort of focused on technology and then being sort of influenced by so many of these things. You can't really control 100% what they're watching
Yeah.
online.
Yeah.
um, but I mean, I find it's hard sometimes because I have to go the hard way sometimes. Well, I ban you for a whole week. You don't touch
Yeah.
anything digital. If they
Yeah.
don't get to listen, then they become so much. It's like you've turned something off in their life when you do that. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult balance to try to control on one way, but then leave them do what
Yeah.
they like and find a way to make them focus on self-development as
Yeah.
much as they do the fun.
Yeah. Well, I think COVID has really pushed a lot of people, I mean, into the digital world. We're spending more time than usual simply because everything's shut. you know, uh,
Yeah.
my son, for example, he's 4 years old. He loves to go to bounce, and just jump on those trampolines and just have some fun, but he can't.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I'll be honest, he has spent more time these days on the iPad. So it really does disrupt the normality of life and routine, because I'm sure your boys will probably be involved in some sort of sports that involves training and practice and all of those different things that really help come together to, make a person have a balanced sort of life. And
Yeah.
so I think one of the things is just, showing a little bit of grace in this period, knowing that it's lockdown. But number two, going back to the whole TikTok idea, that is
Mm.
something that they're most likely using. So let's just say they spend an hour on that a day, but they involve you to try and do a TikTok, try and do one video. That could be
Mm.
20 minutes. So that's, already that online time, you've now become a part of that. And so it's not just them in their own world doing their own thing. No, it's them online, but with you having some fun and actually creating some memories.
Creating some memories, and that's very important. Now, do you find that it is the same engaging with boys and then it is engaging with girls, or there are some major differences? young boys.
So we run a mentoring program called the Royalhood, the program where young people discover their crown. So I do the boys, and my wife obviously takes care of the girls. From her feedback, I understand that girls love to share. They love to open up and talk about stuff. I know
Mm,
with our boys, we like to have a lot of fun. So we,
mm,
even online, like just a couple of days ago, we played a game where they have to run out from the room. I give them a place in their house, for example, the kitchen, and I ask them to go fill a glass full of water, run back. First person back gets the next instruction 4 or 5 times until the last instruction. And then we find a winner who gets a gift voucher. You know,
mm.
they love that. I just, anything with energy and, competition, they love that. So for me, I'm realizing and finding that the boys are still very competitive. They want to have fun and engage through that. And then through that, we also put in a little message for them that really resonates with them. But with the girls, it's a lot more opening up, talking, and chatting and things like that.
All right, let me remind those watching. You're watching African Knowledge here at African Media Australia, and tonight I have Eric Agyeman, who's a youth mentor who does youth leadership and well-being, sessions, trainings, and we're talking about how we can sort of trying to help our young people to become the best they can be in an environment where there's a lot of influences that is not always the best. Eric, um, when you see the whole, I mean, right now with everything that we're facing as a society, with the challenges that affect the whole of the society, what do you think are some of the most critical challenges affecting young people?
mental health mental health is a big one. The biggest the youth age group, 12 to 25, is actually the biggest group of where suicides happen in all of Australia.
Mm,
So there is obviously mental health challenges that a lot of them are facing. There's a lot of stress and anxiety around that age as well, from peer pressure, pressure at home as well, a pressure to do well at school, the pressure for numbers and all that sort of stuff. So all of the pressures and the anxiety, it all drives them to a place where they just feel very anxious about the future, and a lot of them, due to bullying and other things like that, just think within themselves that they don't have what it takes. You got young people who they've been pulled here by school, they've been pulled here by their friends, then they go home, and mum and dad have their own challenges too. We're in a climate right now where just last month 123,000 jobs were lost. So mum and dad might be a little bit heightened, and so there's pressure there. And so I think what is needed is a message of hope and
mm,
examples of hope. People of resilience to really come in and encourage our youth that there is a brighter future ahead for them, that their best days actually hasn't been lived yet, and that what we're going through, this is temporal to what is in the future for us all. And so really, I think, through our mentoring program, one of the reasons why we did a mentoring program was simply because we want to walk alongside young people. A lot of times people come into young people's lives like a flash and then they're out. But for us, it's about, let's journey together. And the proof of the transformation in mentoring and walking alongside someone is actually this. So there's a boy who went through our program 2 years ago, and pretty much every 3 or 4 months we stay in touch. School holidays, we normally have a basketball tournament where all the boys come together. So we've always been in touch. He messaged
mm.
me one morning saying that he wants to leave home. He wants to run away from home because things suck with his stepdad. So I was like, okay. So I called him up straight away, called his stepdad, had a chat with him. He's like, all right, you can come hang out with him. Went, hung out with him, then hung out with the dad. Next day, the three of us were all talking, and the dad and the son were able to reconcile and hug. it's those moments when a kid can turn to you rather than to
Mm.
some other negative choice that makes all the difference when we walk alongside when we check up on young people consistently, not just a once off, but consistently. That's where I believe there is a massive impact in our young people.
And are there any signs that parents or educator or any youth leaders should be aware of to sort of trying to decipher what's going on in the young people's minds and then trying to help them as early as possible?
Yeah, I think one of the ways to detect signs is really going back to one of the points I mentioned before is go go do something they love, and
Mm.
in those conversations will naturally come up. Without them even realizing that they'll start talking, and you'll begin to sort of get glimpses of what's actually going on in their world. For example, you might be with them, and they might get a phone call, from one of their friends, and a conversation might come up or something might come up, and they can open up to you. I think that the other one as well is also, if you see cuts on their body, especially that their
Mm.
hands. I know for a fact that emergency presentations during COVID amongst youth rose by 38% over the last 3 months during COVID. That's young people who have been presented at the emergency ward with
Mm.
cuts and bruises, suicidal attempts, and things like that. So always looking out for those cuts and things like that. And yeah, I think just the best way is just to try and engage them once a week. And I guarantee you something will come out of that that will lead you to be able to ask questions and really sort of see what's going on as well.
Now, getting back to the our experiences as African communities, do you
Mm.
think many African parents dealing with young people were either born here or who came here very young,
Yeah.
do you think parents are sufficiently equipped in trying to not only understand these kids well but engage them and be able to assist them as much as possible, given that we have some of our cultural
Mm.
understandings that
Yeah.
sort of are in opposition with what is happening here.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, when you say sufficiently equipped, I think that we're in the information age. So there is information, there is support all around us. I think it comes back to the individual, their priorities, their convictions. So, for me, obviously being in this work, I'm very, very, every day, I'm very much convicted of how much time I'm spending with my son. So, one of the quotes that I hold very dearly to my life is that the greatest work I will ever achieve in life, the greatest work I will ever do, will be in the four walls of my home. I have this
Mm.
other saying that between your mother's womb and your tomb, what will your legacy be to your kids? And so, for me, I'm very conscious of that. I make time for that. I do programs. My wife and I do programs that benefit us in terms of our family. There's a program that we've actually recently done with an American group. It's called Family ID. It's where, as a family, you come together and you actually define what are your core values and what is
Mm.
like your mission statement for your family. And as a parent, this is awesome because this is part of the legacy that one day we will leave for our kids. So imagine us gone, and here
Mm.
are our kids. What values do they have to actually lead and guide them if the mom and dad haven't actually put something in place? So I think as parents, we all have the resources. There's programs and all these different things. It's just about, I guess, finding the time, the priority, the conviction to
Mm.
apply it, and to also be willing to unlearn some things that we've learnt. I mean, there are times when, with my wife, as any couple, you have arguments, right? And you have to decide: do you want to be right, or do you want to win and save the relationship?
Mm.
and
Mm.
coming from, I completely understand being born and spending 5 years in Ghana, then later in my teenage years going to Ghana. I understand the culture and the difference, the mindset. But when I'm parenting my child, to be honest, I keep some of the rich cultural values like their name and all that sort of stuff. But there's other things that I do that's just from the new information that I have in today's world that we live in.
And what's your view on the influence of faith in family setting?
It's massive.
Spiritual faith.
Massive, massive. So myself, I'm a Christian myself. So when you say faith, it could be Christian, it could be
Yeah.
any other, other belief. But for
Yes.
me, faith has been absolutely my Christian walk has been absolutely pivotal to everything that I do, to who I am, to the root of my identity. For example, my son, his name is Kingston. Purely one of the reasons why is because when I was bullied as a little kid, I felt inferior. But then I realized, hey, like I'm royalty. We're all royalty. So I named
Hmm.
him Kingston so he would never forget that he is a king. He's royalty. And so yeah, my faith is a big part of what I do and who I am.
Absolutely. Let me start taking some of the questions we're having here. John says, asking a question: School disengagement has been associated with with antisocial behavior. What do you have to say about this, Eric? School
So
disengagement.
school disengagement, yeah. So uh, it's a big question, because I think sometimes the school system as well. Let me put it this way: when I was at school, English and a few other subjects, I wasn't keenly interested in those. And so it was very easy for me to try and either wag that class or whatever it may be. And so I think that for young people, just the education around, I guess, the how do I say this, the wholeness of what they're trying to achieve in the future, that
Mm,
the understanding that you might not like something, but it's going to be there. So how
mm,
can we actually change our attitudes towards that? For example, I'm sure you don't like paying bills. It's not the first thing that you want to do when you have some money. But hey, as a responsible adult, it's part of that. And so I think that there's that aspect, but then there's also the aspect where sometimes these kids just want to get out and just exert some energy, and so it's just finding that balance and that time. And but I think though a lot of kids, even when I go to school, sometimes there might be some little disengagement from some kids, and I often say we'll be finished in half an hour, then you can go out and you can talk to all your friends as much as you like. You know what I mean? So really trying to get them to see the balance, I think, is really necessary and really key. Yeah.
yeah. And obviously, there are challenges within our communities where some parents,
Mm.
in some communities where there is a high number of people who've come to Australia from a forced migration background, people who've left their countries in circumstances where they were obviously forced to leave, and maybe not necessarily always, educated,
Yeah.
and that poses a challenge on how they deal with the education of their children here, trying to, because school is
Mm.
sort of both the school system and the parents
Yeah.
working together.
Yeah.
And how do you feel that gap for some of those parents who are challenged by the whole system that they may not necessarily understand and have trouble dealing with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things that my wife and I talk a lot about, with our son, because we've just enrolled him now for 4-year-old kinder. One of the things we always talk about is instilling values and character and morals in them.
Mm,
So if we instill respect and honor, to our son, that hey, it flows from the house outward. So when you get off the bus, you say thank you to the bus driver. When you're in the classroom, what does respect and honor look like? It means that the teacher's teaching, you're paying attention. And so I think that parents, from that sort of background, teaching the kids morals and values will actually have a massive impact for the kid at school, and how they respect their teachers, the rules as well, how they abide by the rules. So the parents may not be able to fill out stuff, and may not be necessarily help them with English, but if they can help them with the morals and the values, then
mm,
that will go a very long way. Because you and I probably know that in life, you might have a doctorate degree, but if you have a stinking attitude,
Mm.
guess who's not getting promoted?
Yeah, it won't be you.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So I suppose you're saying even though some of these parents may not do much help their kids on the curriculum level, but in
yeah,
terms of the values, the
yeah,
discipline, the
yeah,
respect, that
yeah.
can help because that sort of shapes the character of
That's right.
the person, and then the influence on the character flows onto all these other things that they
That's
can do,
exactly
isn't it?
right. That's right. I used to hate a subject in school, high school, and it's actually later on when I was, had changed and did some deep reflection. It wasn't that I hated the subject; it was because I disliked the teacher.
Mm, yeah,
But if I had known like honor, respect, like I do now, then my attitude towards the subject would have been different because I would have shown a different attitude towards my teacher. And
mm,
so sometimes a kid has one incident with a teacher, and in their mind they've written the teacher off. What they've actually done, they've written the whole entire subject off as well. But when they
yeah.
have the values to honor and respect every single person, it has the potential to change a lot of things.
I remember that myself. I didn't like my math teacher in high school, and he was teaching both third, fourth, and fifth grade, and it was a it was a wreck for me. And anyway, that's
Yeah,
another story.
yeah, yeah. And
Now,
and then this flows into the workplace. They finish
yeah,
school, they're working at, let's just say they've got a part-time job at McDonald's, but they got a really bad boss. Well, those values, those respect, those core values can actually help transform that relationship
yeah,
and help in the workplace as well.
yeah. And then just staying back with this parent thing, and John has asked another question saying, the most African parents, this is some of the issues that they face. Now, what is the role of the community in helping both parents, the community leaders, that is,
Yeah,
and other influencers in helping parents and the young people to sort of navigate through some of these
yeah.
issues, specifically in relation to that aspect of things.
Yeah, well, I think one of them is this, right? Is what you're doing is putting out this sort of resource that
Hmm.
parents like John, for example, can ask these questions and can perhaps be enlightened.
Hmm.
So having these resources, having program partnerships with other different programs, like
Hmm.
so like a parents webinar, seminar, whatever that that is,
Hmm.
where parents are given resources once every maybe 3 months, 6 months, that sort of stuff. For the kids as well, programs like even our program, the Royalhood. This is not a plug, by the way, but just just as an example,
That's all right.
we last night we had the CEO of Focus on the Family Australia speak to the parents in our mentoring program. And
Mm.
at the end of the program, at the end of his 1 hour session, which was phenomenal, by the way, he was pointing the parents to all of these resources that they have, like, how to navigate your teenager when, went through a sexualized, gender world.
Hmm.
All of these things that, to be honest with you, I don't specialize in that. But guess what? Someone else does, and they're there to be able to support the parents that have kids that are going through. So for me, I believe so much in an ecosystem of people collaborating together. So,
Mm.
for the community leaders, have a central place where parents can actually contact, that can be pointed, referred to different programs that fit their needs, that really helps them, empower them as well.
Then I suppose beyond the referral to many of the programs that exist, also
Mhm.
working on culturally sensitive or culturally suitable programs where, because there are a lot of programs that are available for the wider
Yeah,
community, may not
yeah,
necessarily be sufficiently suited for the culture. So
yeah.
it's the job of the community leaders to try to bring people and resources together to
That's
establish
right.
some of these programs and make these culturally
Yeah,
sensitive or suitable resources available to parents who need it, isn't it?
yeah. That's absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and let's talk about peer pressure for
Mhm.
one minute. We know that that's one of the the most significant influencing factor
Yeah.
in young people's behavior.
Yeah.
Now, with everything that is happening with technology,
Mm,
that influence is even stronger because it can happen
mm,
remotely, as opposed to in the old
that's
days, people they had to get together and all that.
yeah.
So, how do you what's your advice on how do we start dealing with that sort of peer pressure, both online and in the real world, to trying to shield children from the negative influence that comes from it?
Yeah. So a lot of this stems from the core foundation of identity. And so, parents have a role to play in this, and school and other programs like the Royalhood. It's really steering these kids with a firm foundation of who they are. So, for example, when I was 13 and I joined the Ringwood Boys, the gang, one of the boys said to me, "Hey, here's a cigarette, smoke." Now, all of them smoke. So for me, I was like, I started smoking. Then he said, "Okay, now I want you to sell this," and I sold it and had got a suspension out of that.
Mm,
Without any sort of a foundation of identity, I was literally lost. So a lot of peer pressure, if a kid is really vulnerable to it, it really just shows that they need support and encouragement around their identity. I have this saying that I say a lot in schools. It's not what people call you that matters, it's what you respond to that matters. And I've
mm,
realized that, when people open their mouths, I have no control over what comes out of their mouth. But what I do have control over is how I respond. And how I respond is out of a knowledge of who I am, my
mhm,
knowledge of who I am. And so I think that even in the online world, when the family has core values as well, a kid has morals about respect. I'll be honest with you. Some of these kids will unfollow some of these people they follow online.
mm,
Because it's identity here, it's core values here, respect and honor here, and it guides them because it develops a conscience within them that when they see something, it's like, ooh, that's not right. I'll give you a little practical example. Obviously, I've been married for 9 years now, as of last week. 9 years with my beautiful wife, and
mhm,
I have a conscience that you know we all get like inboxes from different people, this and that, this and that. I just have this thing where I do not start a conversation, with a female to say, "Oh, hi, how are you? Like, what have you been up to?" you know,
mm,
I, I don't start flirting because I have a core value and I know who I am.
mm,
And a lot of the young boys that I've worked with as a kid in Queensland who was asking girls for photos and all these sort of things because there was an absence of values, respect, and identity. And
mm,
so when that switched on, like I kid you not, he actually deleted his Instagram. He actually deleted, and I know he deleted it because I was following him, he was following me. He deleted his Instagram simply because he came back to be like, wow, like I cannot believe I got myself into this place.
yeah, and I suppose I was watching actually something on TV that followed from a tragedy that took place recently within the African communities, where about four, five young people died from a crash. I don't know if you've seen
Yes,
that
I saw that. Yeah, I saw
in the
that as
media.
well. Yeah.
And then following that, one of the investigator who was commenting on that, it says it's very hard to put a mature head onto young shoulders.
Mm,
But I suppose that sort of um, captures the what sort of every parent should try to do is to
mm.
let the head be in advance of the the shoulders.
Yeah,
If that yeah, that head is a little bit more mature than the shoulders, then you have
yeah,
a chance of getting the child to be able to control themselves, not let
mm,
themselves influenced by this sort of peer influence, because that's what led to this sort of strategy where young people crammed into six of them into a
yeah,
same car. Apparently, the one was driving
yeah,
wasn't even licensed and all that. So
yeah,
when but then this is a country where there's freedom and kids
mm,
are encouraged.
Mm.
to kind of do whatever they want to do, be whatever they
Yeah.
want to be. But that sometimes conflicts with some of the values you want to put into their head. So
Mm.
it's a very difficult thing to navigate for parents, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, it's really difficult because you've got kids that don't want to be alone, that don't want to be a loner. They want to be surrounded by friends, and it's just unfortunate that at times it's at the expense of their own good. That they'll hang out with people just to feel like they belong.
Yeah. All right. And then another question say, well, it's you're good in what you do as a mentor. Have you ever thought of becoming a life coach? Well, that's a sort of
Yeah, so I'm an accredited John Maxwell facilitator and coach. So
okay.
well, we're actually launching what we call the Leadership Hood next year in January after Australia Day. It's basically a student leadership camp. That's something that we're going to be actually launching as well, that we're really, really excited about. So I guess mentor, life coach, it's sort of,
Kind of the same, yeah.
it's kind of the
Yeah.
same, but it's what what I live and breathe. Just because I know the impact, I know the challenges of young people, but I also know that the greatness of young people and what their futures can become when they're put in the right direction, and that's what we try and do.
And maybe just one more question before we finish.
Yeah.
We see a lot of parents because we're talking about life coaching or coaching. A lot of
Mm.
parents got coaches for their kids, for sport, for a variety
Yeah.
of, for music, for a lot of things, but
Yeah.
they don't think of having a life coach or a youth coach for the son,
Yeah.
which is actually even more important than everything else. Do you agree?
Oh my goodness. First of all, every parent needs a coach,
Yeah.
right? So for me and my wife and I, we've been doing marriage counseling for I think 6 years now, and not that anything's wrong, not at all, but it's just because we want to have a great marriage, a great relationship, right? So
Yeah.
we value the experience of a marriage counselor to help us, especially I'm African, she's Middle Eastern. There are differences, we
Yes.
communicate differently, so it's
Yeah.
great to have a third party that can steer us. But Michael Jordan, a lot of your viewers may know, obviously know Michael Jordan, probably Michael Jordan fans.
Hmm.
In 1997, I believe, after his I believe it was his fifth or his sixth championship with Chicago Bulls, at the prime of his career, he left the Chicago Bulls after just winning a championship. In his Netflix series, the what was it? Not the Last Dance. That was I've forgotten what the series is called. I think it's the
Hmm.
Last Dance. I'm not quite sure. But in that series, he answers the question why he left the Chicago Bulls. He said, because Phil Jackson, my coach, his contract was up and they wouldn't renew his contract. That's why I left. See, Michael Jordan, a 6-time NBA champion,
Yeah.
knows the value of a coach to the point that when his coach wouldn't coach a team anymore, Michael Jordan said, well, in that case, I'm done with this team as well. That is the value of having a coach and mentor or someone that can help and guide you. The last thing I'll say is this they say there's no shortcuts in life, and that's true. Like you can't build a Tesla car in one day or a Rolls Royce car. It can't. You can't. There's no shortcuts, but there are fast tracks in life. And
Mm.
a fast track is when you partner with someone who's further along than you, and they hold your hand, they guide you. In the case of Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan, very much so. And so I think every single person on earth who wants to get better in whatever area of their life, they ought to have a coach or mentor.
All right. So the parents need to coach themselves. They need to coach their children and probably even find a coach for the young people when the communication is not going well anymore. So that's a very good way to kind of end this show. Eric Agyeman, thank you very much for your time to African Knowledge. We do
Pleasure.
appreciate your time to our show, and we know you a busy person, and it's a pleasure that you've managed to get some time to come and talk to us. We will see if in the future we may want to bring you back again for more on this, because there's a lot of need for young people, especially in our migrant communities, where there are a lot of challenges and young people need a lot of
Yeah.
guidance.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And to yourself and what you do for the community, thank you so much for being a shining light in our community and having platforms like this. It's really awesome, really great. So well done. To your followers as well, if anyone wants to sort of see what stuff that we do or want more information, if you Google just my name, stuff should come up, or even the Royalhood, things will come up there as well, and on social media as well. I'd love to connect with you all. Yeah.
And if you can't find him, come to me.
Yes.
And I'll
Yes.
find him for
These are
you.
my details.
All right. Thank you very much for all of you watching. As usual, we encourage you to share the video, comment, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have something that you want to share with the community, you may be out there, you have some skills, either things you are doing that are adding value into people's lives, we'd like to know more about you. To have role models in the community is something very important. That's why we're trying to bring people who do stuff so that they can not only share their knowledge, their insight, but just the image of somebody doing something great is important for our younger generation. So until next time, as usual, stay blessed and stay safe. Thank you very much.